people into your church. But before I introduce our panelists, let me walk you through the Q&A session protocols so you can fully participate in the discussion. You have the option of scanning the QR code displayed on the screen and post your questions digitally. You also have the option to step up to the microphone stands placed in the aisles when it's time for the Q&A segment. For those joining us online, you're encouraged to simply type your questions in the comment section and our team will curate them for our panelists. Now let's meet our esteemed panelists. Our first panelist is a visionary pastor, academic, a business leader. He is a founder of the Maker's House Chapel International, one of the fastest growing charismatic churches in Ghana. With over 3 decades in ministry, he has successfully bridged corporate excellence and church leadership, making him a sought-after speaker, consultant, and mentor. He is also a senior lecturer at the School of Graduate Studies in Marketing, Brands, and Strategic Management. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Buedi Nyameche. Please appreciate him as he comes. Appreciate him as he comes. Please sustain the appreciation as he comes. Please be seated. Our next panelist is a pastor, educator, and leadership development expert. He is the Chancellor of the University of Gold Coast, formerly Accra Business School, and the founder of Pleasant Place Church Worldwide. A firm believer in raising leaders for both ministry and the marketplace, he has mentored countless young leaders and entrepreneurs across Africa. His work spans church growth, education, and leadership development, and he is a respected author and speaker whose influence continues to shape lives. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Bishop Dr. Gideon Titi Offer. Please appreciate him as he comes. Thank you, sir. Please, you may be seated. And guiding today's conversation will be Reverend Albert Okran.
Well, good afternoon to us all, and welcome once again on behalf of conference hosts Pastor and Mrs. Otabil to the first afternoon session of DOULOS Conference 2025. I'm privileged to be interacting with 2 very accomplished pastors and educationists, and our topic is very simple. So first of all, welcome Bishop Dr. Titi Offer.
Thank you, Albert. Happy to be here and greatly honored to be on the platform with Dr. Mensa Otabil. Very honored to be here.
Thank you very much. Also, a big welcome to you, Dr. Buedi Nyameche. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for this great opportunity given to us by our Father to be here as well.
Amazing. I think today's topic is one that every pastor, every leader should be and will likely be very interested in. The topic of opening the front door of your church. Without the subtitle of welcoming people, somebody would argue, but my church doors are open. But the questions we'd like to explore are, is it possible that by our positioning, our messaging, our attitudes, we literally shut the door without knowing? What are the scriptural foundations of opening the door? And those are the guidelines we hope to receive from you. So let's start with you, Bishop. Why should we keep the front doors of our church open? What is the scriptural basis for we keeping the doors open?
Thank you, Albert. I think in mission studies, the expression opening the front doors of your church is actually talking about outreaches. So there are 3 stages: evangelizing the lost, edifying the saved, and creating an embracing warmth, an atmosphere that encourages people to remain in the church. I am very happy that this conference is focused on service, the bond servant, because at the heart of serving God is evangelizing the lost, which is very crucial from pastoring to ushering. Your main aim is, how do I evangelize the lost, which is very, very important and crucial. The basic definition of evangelizing the lost is what Madam Teresa said, that having Jesus in your heart and taking it from your heart and putting it in the heart of another person. And this reminds me, my son married about 2 years ago, and when he started dating this lady, he wanted the lady to gain acceptance. He wanted to take the love in his heart and transfer the same love to the heart of his mother, his father, and his siblings. So he used to tell me a lot. He is aware I love young people who love to study, so he'll come to me and say, Daddy, do you know Edith got first class in University of Ghana? Do you know Edith is an auditor? He kept telling me so many good things about the young lady, and I started liking the young lady even before meeting her. Then one time we were going out for a family lunch, and then my wife comes to me and says, would you like Edith to join us for lunch? I said, what has Kevin been telling you? And then his siblings will come around and say, Daddy, please, let's go. And then I felt, listen, this guy has just evangelized all of us for a lady, you know. And I think that is, if you love someone, you talk about the person. You discuss the person with friends and family. And that is the basis of evangelism. You love Jesus, he is in your heart, and you want to share the person, talk about the person you love, especially to the people you also love, you know. So the deepest expression of your love to God is telling people about his son and what his son did for us. You know, taking that love from your heart and putting it in the heart of many people, which is very crucial. It forms what the foundation of opening your church doors. And then the next one is edifying the saved, which is creating strategic discipleship. The spiritual formation of church people is very crucial. And then finally, creating an embracing warmth, that is retention strategy.
Thank you very much. So we'll look at evangelism, we'll look at discipling, we'll look at retention. Dr. Bodi Nyamiche, let's hear preliminary thoughts on the subject and then push on to whether the pastor can be aware or unaware that your church doors are opened or closed. But let's start with your preliminary thoughts on the subject.
Well, thank you again. Thanks for having me. Biblically, I mean, if you look at St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 14, when we are told to go to the streets and bid them to come in, that talking about the evangelism, you are going out there to reflect the image of the Christ, or extend who he is and what he has been to you to the world. And so you've gone out there, you've shared him with the other people or people that you've met, and you're asking them to come in. Come into a place of worship, a place where they will be fed, a place where they will grow. So in talking about the front door of the church, you are looking at the outlook in itself. You are looking at, because it's a service industry, you are not, save of course you are dealing with the product areas, people who sell miracle items and all of that. Apart from that, everything, you are looking at the service dominant area. And so if you're going to bring people in, it's going to be purely based on what you are rendering, the services you are giving, or say the product you are giving to the people. If it's meeting the needs of the people, you've opened the doors to them. People will naturally gravitate towards where they feel their needs are going to be met, naturally. And so if they know that I'm going to meet, for instance, I'm going to get saved, healed, delivered, I'm going to prosper in a place, automatically you've given them an invitation. So opening your front door, of the front door of the church, is inviting people to the church, asking them to come in. And it can be through any of the major portals we have, whether you look at the place, the physical evidence, that's the beautiful sanctuary we have. It's inviting, and things like that. But just as you said, a pastor can have the front door shut without knowing, because you might think conceptually that you've done what you have to do, but it is an A to Z affair. Anything in the service, it starts from the car park to the car park. So you might be thinking you are preaching good messages, impactful sermons, but if it is not something that it's a cultural thing for everybody to be welcoming, inviting, they want to establish people in the space that you're building, no matter how good you think you are, the doors will be closed to other people. So yes, the door to a church, the front door can be closed without the pastor himself knowing.
Let me stay with the last theme you just expressed, and ask, are there practical tools? If you walk into a church, let's say outside Ghana, and you walked in, or before you even got there, assessed their media outlook and everything, are there certain key things you would look out for to tell you that this church is a welcoming church? For those who are taking down notes, would you list a couple of things that send a signal that the doors of the church are wide open to anyone? Let's stay with you, Doctor. Yes.
So let's practicalize it by using Christ Temple East here. When you walk in, the way you are received, even at the car park, because it is always, like I said, because it's a service in itself, it's an end-to-end thing. Whether somebody's going to stay in a church or leave, it doesn't just depend on the pastor. It depends sometimes even on the people at the parking lot, the greeters who are going to receive you. So when somebody comes in and see how orderly the place is and how respectful the people, say, at the parking lot are, and they come in and they are beautifully ushered in, that is an indication that, okay, I'm in a place where at least I am respected or welcomed. Then you move on to looking at, say, the ambience of a place. For instance, there is a paper that was done by somebody, and he was talking about the usage of smoke in church when they want to have the effect of the light. And sometimes we don't realize that there are people who might be asthmatic or who don't like the smoke, and we don't check how close they are to some of these things. And so such a situation or scenario can also tell somebody that, you know what, it is either I tell them that I love this church, but put me somewhere else, or you kill the smoke, because his health will be prioritized over whatever he's getting. He might think, okay, I love listening to Dr. Mensa Otabil, but I can listen to him online. Why do I go there? So there are so many things there, the welcoming nature of the people, the friendliness of even the neighbors, the people that the person is going to sit by. Because you can get into a place and before you say anything, you are sized up. And somebody is looking at either your wig or your bag or your shoe, looks at them and say that, okay, so what is he doing here? This is not your place. You should have gone to the church next door, not here, because this is a bougie place. And so such an attitude will definitely tell the person that, okay, this is not for you. There are other indicators as well, but
let me go to you, Bishop, and I'm sure you are itching to add on, but let me contextualize it. Listening to Dr. Bodinya Mitchell, I'm asking myself, who is the champion of this process? Who leads this effort? And having situated that, how do you get everyone on board driving in one direction?
So, Albert, let me start from where I ended in terms of outreaches and what I call in-reach. So there is an outreach which a church embarks on, and then there is also an in-reach. That is what we do, reaching out to the people already in the church. This, I believe that, as we all know, everything rises and falls on leadership. So the pastor himself must be outreach oriented, preparing the church for the world outside the church. There are two groups of people that we see on Sunday: those who are coming to church and those who are coming to Christ. The Bible says, if any man is in Christ. So there are those who are in Christ and those who are in church, And sometimes it worries me, because if a pastor, we are in the 3rd month of the year, and I can tell you there are pastors here who have preached every Sunday and have never made an altar call. It's worrying. It should worry every one of us that the evangelistic mandate, which forms the main mandate of the church, the main mission of the church, is not driving the ministries of many pastors. It is very easy for people to walk to church. It is called what we call brand outreach. Churches are building very strong brands, and people are naturally attracted to brands. For instance, IGCC is a strong brand. And so I meet a lot of young people. You start witnessing to them. Do you go to church? Yes, I go to church. Which church did you go to? It's either ICGC for those who want to associate themselves with charismatics, for those who want to associate themselves with Pentecostals. So I go to Church of Pentecost or Assemblies of God. Probe further, ask the person, so what is the name of your pastor? And they can't. So we'll have people coming to church, but more people are coming to church, and a few people are actually coming to Christ. And it is something that pastors will need to work on, and it starts from the pulpit. What we preach from the pulpit, what we do in our departments within the church. For instance, a choir leader's mission is not only to sing well, but to use the platform to evangelize the lost. I have had situations where people got born again not because of what the pastor preached, but because of how the choir sang. And everything around the church should focus on one thing: presenting Jesus to the world. And I'm excited that Dr. Otabil, this year's theme here is Jesus. And I am happy that he's spearheading a new move, something he's been doing, but now it's been a new move where the church is going back to the basics. Jesus is the central figure of what we do, and we need to present him, we need to preach him, we need to train people around us to understand this. Or else, whatever we do, one day we will stand before the judgment seat of God, and all you want to hear is not how many people you pastored, but thou good and faithful servant.
Thank you very much. Doc, let me stay with you on the same question, because I'm looking for what you marketing people call alignment. Can there be a situation where what is on the pastor's heart, the shepherd, the steward, the servant, the doulos, that heart for the people is not felt by the people through the organization? And can there be an instance where you communicate one thing on the pulpit, but those who are working with you in various parts of the church have a different outlook, and by virtue of contact hours tend to superimpose theirs in all the wrong places and create difficulty for the pastor? Let's talk about that.
Well, thank you once again. There can actually be a disconnect because we are social animals. So once you, as a pastor, you have a vision, you want to bring people in, the onus lies on you. You are the one that reflects, or you are the brand ambassador of what God has given to you, just as Bishop was saying. And so you have been able to tell people that this is where we are going. Now, it's not everybody that will conform. Not in every organization you have outliers. But sometimes it's also because we don't communicate the vision clearly. The Bible says, write the vision down, make it plain, so that he who reads it will run. So runners of visions, people are able to run with visions if it's clear enough. If it's all over the place, it's very difficult for them to even comprehend. If they can't comprehend, they can also articulate it to the next person. So it is possible that you, as the pastor, your heart will not even be seen, or even if you try to postulate where you stand, they will not be able to appreciate it. What are some of the things that you can do to make sure that there is that alignment, just as you said? One of the things is continuous training of the people. You just have to keep on training people until you bring them to the levels that you want. There is nothing more important than continuous training. Just as Bishop were having a conversation, in any of the management sciences, if you want people to perform, you need to train them. And so let's say that you want your people to get up and start running with what you feel it's pertinent on your heart. Train them, bring them up to speed. They are your children, more or less. Train up the child the way he should go, so that when he grows, he will not depart from it. And in doing that, you have to also lead by example. You don't tell people we are fasting and they come and see you eating. You don't tell people that we are evangelizing and you don't do it too. I think that the best way of teaching people is by allowing them to learn through observation. And so let them see you do it. Today you taught them, you said it, they are not there yet. Lead the way. Keep doing it. Because as long as you keep doing it, there will be people that will have a change of heart and say that, you know what, I want to go after the way. After all, the disciples, they were the people of the way. What way are you showing? What path are you charting that you want the people to follow? And as long as you keep doing it, they will follow suit.
Just 1 minute more on that, Bishop. So earlier on you mentioned that people can size people up and down 3 times without saying anything, and the message is clear. You're not welcome here. What about people who use their personal idiosyncrasies, not necessarily reflecting the church's policy, but personal preferences, to shut the door to people, especially new people who are coming in, either based on their dreadlocks, the way they look, the way they walk, something that the person doesn't like personally, they make it almost like church policy and shut the door to the person, either to a department or right at the entrance, unbeknown to the pastor. How do you find out and deal with these things that could potentially hurt the church?
Well, first of all, we all have to appreciate that it's a heterogeneous environment. Your church is not for everybody. Your church. You are not, as much as we are reaching out, it's not everybody that is going to be attracted to what you do. That's why there are people that are living maybe 2 or 3 blocks away. They will still drive and go to Mozambique Disco Christo Church. I mean, we will not be able to appeal to everybody. And so you're based on the demographics that God has called you to. There are people that when you go into of course there are people that will not come to this church, not because our sermons are not the best, but because they themselves feel, okay, no, there is no interpreter, there is no translator, and I'm not very good with the language there. So although I love it, I'm going somewhere else. But if the person is to come in and the person is not looking all that, I keep saying this, that it is not about how somebody came in. It's about how we make them feel and how we make them look afterwards. So if somebody comes in with dreadlocks, we should embrace them, because even if we are not, we feel that, okay, you should be more decent than wearing a dreadlocks. I think that it is the sermons the person will keep on hearing that will bring the transformation to the person. I must add this, that, for instance, I am not very familiar with this area. I don't know where a nightclub is. And so, let's say there is a nightclub at Labadi Beach Hotel. And the person went to the nightclub on Saturday evening. And by dawn, before they were done, the Holy Spirit ministered to the person. My daughter, go to ICGC today or you are a dead woman. And the lady came with a micro skirt. And she walked in. I believe that the first thing that everybody, what's she doing here? Is she here to tempt somebody or to, what is she doing? It's because technically we are protective of our brand and our fellowship. But if we embrace people, not knowing where they are coming from, and have the mindset to transform lives or change lives, no matter how they came, we'll embrace them knowing that every sinner has a righteous future and every righteous man has a sinful past. And we will not be judgmental towards people. We'll embrace them and help them in their transformation journey.
Excellent. Bishop, back to you. Anytime we come into seminars like this and we have accomplished pastors sharing, my heart goes out to also young pastors who are startups who say, I like hearing this from the big boys or big players in quotes. What about that person whose church is not very big? Can they implement these ideas right up front, or they need to wait until they get big before they can implement them?
No, it's even easier to do these things that we are doing if you have a smaller church. Because the bigger the church, the more problems you have to deal with. And sometimes you leave out the very important things and you start doing other things. So I have pastored a small church before, and I even did better pastoring a small church than all these things we are choosing. Also, it's applicable to smaller churches because you do these things to be able to grow. So create the atmosphere, create the environment where people feel welcome, people feel loved, and they will stay.
I'm going to come to you very shortly for your questions. So don't wait till we start asking for the questions. Start sharing them via the various channels provided, either the online comments or the scanning the QR code and sending your questions in advance. But let me stay with you, Bishop Titi Ofe. Can technology, the use of technology, our streaming platforms and so on, can they help communicate to that person sitting 6,000 kilometers away in London, UK, that our church doors are open?
Yes, Albert. COVID taught all of us that technology has come to stay with the church, and pastors must invest in that and upgrade themselves to be able to make use of technology. As we are here now, I'm sure there are more people watching us outside this auditorium across various countries of the world because of technology. And I think that that is one of the major platforms available to us to reach many more people outside the four walls of the church. Young people are addicted to their phones, and they keep scrolling. When they are going to sleep, they keep. And I am happy that for every 10 scrolls you do, at least you will find one pastor preaching there. So if you are not there, you are missing. Churches must invest in technology. Pastors must educate themselves to be able to use it.
Let's talk about intentionality, Dr. Burinyamiche. And starting with the pastor. I like the way you dressed. It sends a certain signal. Let's talk about signaling. How much does the pastor's personal brand, image, positioning communicate about the doors of the church and how open they are or otherwise? And not just how you dress, but how you talk after sermon. A lot of the things that we take for granted, how do they communicate to the person, either in person, online, or anywhere, that the doors of the church are open or otherwise?
So the church in itself becomes a separate legal entity by guarantee. It's there whether you are there or not. It should, especially like we did in the first session, if you are able to say, I'm out of here, and other people are take over from you. But once you are there, especially if you are the pioneer of a church, your brand and that of the church, they are together. They are intricately interwoven. And so your church brand leverages on your personal brand, leveraging on secondary brand associations. And so your church, a lot of people will know, say, Doc, maybe more than they will know ICGC in other jurisdictions. And that will have an automatic impact on ICGC. And building your personal brand, it's crucial because you become the face or the poster boy of the church. That is why no matter how good a church is doing, if the pastor gets into crisis, it affects the church too. And it also tells you that you need to learn how to manage your personal brand, manage it, as in being intentional about what you say, where you go, what you do. It's not every meeting that you are supposed to be available and be present. It's not because you don't like people, it's because you have a brand to protect. You have an image that you want to project out there. It's not that you don't like people, it's not that you are antisocial, but maybe you being social, in quote, might compromise the integrity or the authenticity of the brand that you uphold. And it cuts across. It's not just the way you speak, it's the way you also make people feel. It's the way you dress. Somebody said the way you dress will determine the way you are dressed. And so maybe in the future when I grow, I would like to dress like Bishop Titiofe, as wear more suits. And by the way, I've already told him. And so, and
I also want to grow young and dress like you. So.
And so your personal, your brand is so important. Most of the things that we do with regards to, Pastor Albert, with regards to the invitation, the outreach, the inreach, all the things that we are talking about, it's just putting you on, say, a brand pyramid is putting you just at the salient stage. It's just creating awareness. But when people have an encounter with you, then they can judge and feel who you are. Before they can say that, okay, I'm an ICGC. Before they can say that, oh, I belong to this church. I am a Pentecost. I am a Methodist. They have to resonate with the brand. And that is only possible upon the imageries they will form when they encounter you, the way you make them feel, the way you talk to them, the way you respond. If you are my age and you want to dress like you are 80, you are only telling the 80-year-olds that you are the ones I want, because your brand, the projection of your brand is the magnetic field around what you are doing. And so you project your personal brand, which will have a direct impact on the church brand that you are building, because people cannot decouple the two. They always work together. So the bigger the church you want to build, the bigger the brand you want to build for yourself. And so you have to work, you have to look at it both ways and build both together.
Bishop.
Just let me add a little to that. So, for instance, ICGC is a big brand, and the brand is very well managed. Greater Works, for instance, have been around for a long time, and every year it improves and it communicates something. It communicates very hugely to global audience. If you see how this conference was packaged, it's just a first year, but it's already sent a message. But what is more important about this brand, ICGC, is the brand integrity, which is Dr. Otabil. And it's very crucial. The Bible talks about David having led with skillful hands and with integrity of heart. So, very important. You may lead with skillful hands, but if you don't have integrity, it becomes a big issue. So go on, build your brand, but make sure the brand integrity is strong. There are people who have come to Accra Business School simply because it belongs to Titi Ofe. And I have always said to the school, I am the brand integrity of the school, and we need to keep it. So it's very crucial that as a pastor, do all the colors, do everything, but you must be the brand integrity of the church.
And just to add to that as well, so what makes a brand enduring is this consistency as well. A brand has to be consistent over time. So when you look at, just as Bishop was saying, if you look at Greater Works, consistent over time. If you sleep and if somebody wakes you up from your sleep and you hear Dr. Otabil speak, you know this is Dr. Otabil. You don't even need anybody to give you any introduction, because his style has been very consistent over time. And your integrity and your consistency, just as he mentioned, a brand will always lose its value and worth, the equity of the brand, if the brand doesn't show consistency over time. And the equity or the value that they are going to attribute to your brand is not just what you say to the people, we are ICGC. It is what, in theory, we call it customer-based brand equity. And so when they come here, it is what they feel when they came here that they will go out there and said, the ICGC I heard of and the ICGC I experienced are not at variance. There is no rift between them. In fact, they have even exceeded my expectation. That is the consistency that will push your brand to the next level, and we have to build on that.
Intentionality. Doc, sorry you have become the case study, but you mentioned intentionality. Last year, the theme for IGCD was God. This year, it is Jesus. I will not be surprised that next year it will be the Holy Spirit.
It's one of the biggest conversations. One of the biggest conversations in town today. Let's talking about exceeding expectations. I think there's some prediction taking place right now. Talking about exceeding expectations, I'm going to give you two scriptural scenarios, and let's talk about. Now, you are not the one being asked. Other people are being asked, and the response is being given, and you are not there, and you don't know. So, since you mentioned exceeding expectations, let me start with you with the Queen of Sheba. She came and saw Solomon, the house he had built, the food on his table, the infrastructure, the seating of the ministers, their dress code, their apparel, the entryway, and the Bible says there was no more spirit in her. This is a case where before she even came, she had heard, and then when she came, she said, the experience is even greater than what I heard. What is the role of what people say in communicating how open your church is and what people should expect?
So she came and even saw beyond what she heard. Others will go somewhere and will not see anything close to what they heard. And I think that the most difficult thing to repair is disappointed expectations. When people have a certain expectation of you, of your church, and they come in there and see that what they heard, what was communicated, is not actually what is in operation. They suffer from disappointed expectation. They leave the church and actually go out there to damage the church. They go in there and tell the people, oh, I thought this church was like this. I went in there, Charlie, it's nothing like what I had at all. So it's very important that you do what you say and say what you do. And that is very crucial. And it's part of the branding with Jason. You can have a very nice vehicle driving on the street. My wife is very fond of doing that. We'll just be driving, and then you will see the same car. She drives Benz, and she and say, oh, and you look at this Benz. It looks nicer than mine. And then I keep telling her, you haven't entered, you haven't driven it. So just manage what you have. And sometimes that is how it thinks. We see other people. People will see your church and leave another church to come. They will see your post on Facebook. They will see your suit on Facebook. They will see all the branding on Facebook. But make sure what you are communicating out there is exactly what you are doing.
Or what you do is better.
Yes, or should be better. Because one person who suffers from disappointed expectation goes out there and will spread it. And it's very difficult to get those things repaired.
Excellent. And just for referencing purposes, that was 2 Chronicles chapter 9, and especially verse 3 and verse 4. Let me stay with you and this time do 1 Samuel 16, verse 18. Dr. Burinya Miche, and that was the servant of Saul describing David. When Saul asked for a reference, he says, I've seen the son of Jesse who knows how to play. He's a brave person. He's a warrior, fine-looking gentleman, and the Lord is with him. Can what people say about the pastor and the holistic description of the pastor be an attraction point for filling the church?
Yes, sir. I mean, in service, like pastoring, you can't debunk the importance of perception. It's crucial. Of course, there are people who are malicious, who can say things that they have no clue, especially somebody who probably was with you and was bitter. They can stand anywhere and discredit whatever you're saying. And it will amaze you to know that even though it was cooked and it's fabricated, it will still have an impact. And so what people will say about you, just as Bishop was saying, that they can go and spread a bad thing. in marketing, we call those ones terrorists. And so a terrorist is somebody who, upon a bad experience, goes out there and tells everybody all the bad things. Even if they experienced 2, they will tell them it was 10. But we also have the reverse, the apostles, who will go out there and they'll amplify your efforts. And if they go out there and they amplify what you're doing, oh, he's a good man, he's a man of war, he's loving. This pastor is always there for people. Call him at 2, he'll pick up. He's the first person to check up on you. The more people get to know you at that relational, people, oh, okay, that is the kind of pastor I'm looking for. Or that is not the kind of pastor I'm looking for. So what people will say about you, doing a perceptual index or mapping, whatever people are going to say about you is going to have a direct impact on the visitation or the people that are going to join your church.
I'm going straight to the audience, but so far, one word on our description, our conversation so far, one word. If I ask you for one word so far, your key word on what we've been discussing so far, what would it be?
Because I've said so many things, but I will look at brand consistency.
I was going to give you the same word actually.
Yeah, I
So
will look at
alignment.
being consistent with what you do as a church, because that typifies the culture that you've built. Culture is the way a group of people live, and if they live that over time, it forms the climate that everybody that comes will automatically get into and be submerged into.
So the key word from Dr. Nyamiche is consistency. Let's come to you, Bishop Titi Ofe.
Well, it's difficult when a preacher is asked to give a key word, but I think the gospel should form the central focus of every pastor. Let's preach the gospel. That is how we open the doors of the church.
And that is the word, the gospel. Beautiful summary of the lessons so far. At this point, we'd love to have you come to the microphones. And while you do, we'll start with the questions that have been shared online, because they're coming from different places, from Oxford in the UK, from here at Christ Temple. And let me start with the one from Christ Temple here. It was not addressed to any of you, so let me throw it up and let's see if we get some help. Hayford wants to know, how do you balance opening the front door to ensure that we are not bringing in all kinds of people who compromise the security and engender corruption by bringing in the wrong people? Is there such a thing as the wrong people, Bishop? Are there wrong people?
Well, I don't think so. I think the church's doors should be opened to all. In fact, one of the parables of Jesus, where a man prepared a wedding feast for a selected group of people who didn't show up, and now had to get his servants to go on the street and bring whoever is willing to come and have dinner. So I think that the church's door must be opened to all. The church is a place where behavioral diseases are dealt with, which cannot be dealt with any hospital. I think that the church's door should be open to all.
All right. Thank you very much. Before I come to you, and I'm going to start with you, Madam, in half a minute, but before I come to you, Dr. Nyamiche,